Bravehearts, Urban Knights, Coach Mad Hatters, Urban Creatrix, and Crimson Velvet VIPs. Welcome to my Saturday. It's April 2nd, 4:12 p.m. DMV Standard Time. I have arrived to share some stuff, some good stuff, in my opinion, quite a bit of good stuff. I consulted the cards, and so that will be part one. And then we will have a part two where I am going to read to you a opening statement from KRS-One through the Temple of Hip Hop. So I recently became a member, but I want to say maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, I sat in on the conversation with Alicia Keys on Drink Champs. And so when she was speaking to Nori, they came across a very interesting piece of context that I latched onto immediately, and that was adopting hip hop as a race. Now, it is already deeply rooted in considerations as a culture, which lays the fundamental basics, or should I say, KRS-One and the Temple of Hip Hop have so eloquently laid down the fundamental basis of certain things when it comes to how we value and perceive ourselves within this emotionally hostile realm. And I think that's what I'm going to continue to call it, regardless of the pockets of happiness and delight we find here as emotional creatures. This is still a realm or a timeline, a lifeline, or an existential infrastructure it's still very hostile to the emotional intellect of a being. We are still being encouraged to dismiss our emotions, to judge them wrongfully, or to judge others wrongfully when these emotions come upon us. We are expected to have skills that we don't even know exist, let alone navigate a language that is still very unfamiliar to us. So it's almost like we are being expected to hold a fluent conversation in French, having only heard 1 or 2 French words. We have not become standardized in love languages, let alone our abilities to effectively express such things. I've been tracking emotions inside of the collective like some people chase tornadoes, and it's been my jam for a while. I have been the subject of my case studies as well as the peer reviewer of others. One of the main reasons why I began reading tarot cards and interpreting oracle cards was for the sake of me understanding me. I wanted to introduce a tool into the conversations that I was having with my non physical agency to help me, like a golden compass, if you will, navigate uncertainty, navigate complexity, or just the downright fuckery that left me confused on a day to day basis. And so to this date, I don't sell readings. And if I am the conductor of a reading, it's either for me to gather information or for those inside of my interior circles, my intimate circles. So I don't sell readings. I don't do readings as a form of professional income. So most often, if I do a reading, I am not going to tell you about your boyfriend. I'm not going to tell you about your job or your income. Uh, my view is more so on self-discovery and existential values. That is from where I will be coming from. There are enough readers out there that can tell you about your boyfriend and y'all comic ties, which I honestly believe that if you're looking and searching for those type of answers, you honestly ought to learn how to read tarot for yourself, because there are these nooks and crannies, regardless of how much readers want to tell you that they connect with your energy. You already connected to it. You're already connected to it. And why aren't we learning mystical skills? Why aren't we investing in our soft skills? Why are we so scared to venture below the heart chakra? Telling folks to get grounded and then in the same sentence tell them about their low vibratory frequency. It just amazes me how these two don't ever cross section when we're talking about content and context, especially in the realms of existential conversations. Why must this be so? Why are we not charging ourselves with homework assignments as our own teachers? Why are we not going into the bookstore and asking our intuition to guide us to the content that we from within are interested in, drawn to, curious by? So here's the layout. And I'm going to tell you what all the cards are. And then I'm going to talk my way through it. And then we are going to end this segment with me reading the opening statements from KRS-One. Um, I probably will begin to speak more about my sentiments and notions as an ambassador of hip hop as a race. And it is totally different from approaching hip hop as a consumer or someone who's seeking to be entertained. And once I get to reading the opening statements, I think it'll fortify what it is that I mean and why I am leading with this, which is in conjunction to my ambassadorships to counteract the prohibition of cannabis, as well as my ambassadorships to counteract the terrible campaigns around synthetic antidepressants or anti-anxiety, anything that has its ability to contour, enhance, or manipulate our emotional bodies. The intelligence around that, the intelligence of how us as human beings are still missing the mark with how we align with how we define our energies in motion, and that energies run the gamut. And if we are always running from the shadow like vibratory frequencies, we're going to lose our balance. And some things are happening to continue to pinpoint how we are wobbling on the lopsided natures that everything has to be solar, synergetic, full of hoopla, fantastical, always in the mix of something. And so I've begun asking folks to help me better understand what low vibratory frequency they are talking about when they speak in such these judgmental, convicted tones, as if these energies from one spectrum, light, solar, masculine, to the other side of the spectrum, which is dark, feminine, lunar, and all that's in between, and how we differentiate and navigate these things when it comes to how we judge thyself as well as others, and what that honestly means and how it shows up day to day. So here are the cards, and I may take a snapshot of it and make it the thumbnail just so you can see what I see. Do you see what I see? So the first card, the thing that leads this whole thing is the Ace of Pentacles. And it made me smile with that being the first card out, mainly because as as an American native, maybe I shouldn't even structure it that way because that's even a loaded term. As someone born into the American motif, yeah, that feels better. Okay. Someone born into the mind and heart framing of the American motif, more than likely, your life is subjugated to the pursuit of money or multiple streams of it, and the boogeyman being the absence thereof, AKA poverty. The interesting thing about my life is that it has been raised in a beautiful blend of both. I have always been a this and that is true type of person. Very rarely do I lean far to one side versus way far to the other side. I usually toggle right at the meridian where my view can see the likes and dislikes of both sides or the multiple sides. Because I honestly believe this earthling experience is multi-purposed. It's a multiplex, all depending on the person, place, or thing, or the multi or the combination of thereof. So it can get real tricky if for me personally, as I decipher and be the expressionist that I am, it would get a little tricky if I got stuck in one pocket or another. The majority of the last 11 years for me has been sifting through content and context of a variety of natures. And at first, it used to get a little weird for me because I was taking on the judgments of others that didn't understand why I was hop, skipping, and jumping from this context to this content to that context and all over the place as far as culture and diversity. But that's always been me. I am intrigued by the uniqueness of it all. I've always been one to metaphorically walk in the dark. And so those that I've come across or have crossed paths with that are this ultra lightness, I am baffling to them. I am baffling to them at how it is that I am willing to hold your hand while we walk through shadows. And I don't need a flashlight because I understand the truth by the way that it feels. And chaos is inevitable. Quite honestly, there have been pockets in my life where I was able to bear witness to a tidy life, where everything was tidy, everything was predictable, everything was routine, and from there, life launched. And there's nothing wrong with those that have those types of paths. But we honestly cannot then begin to torpedo those that are not with a whole bunch of shame and blame, because even the tone of voice can render implication in regards with acceptance or dismissiveness. It's all in there. So Ace of Pentacles, Three of Cups, Nine of Swords. I'm sorry, not, no, no, Eight of Swords. Eight, one, two, three. Eight of Swords, Eight of Swords, Ace of Wands, the Devil, Six of Cups, the Queen of Pentacles, the Tower in reverse. the Page of Cups, Knight of Wands, Ten of Swords, Ace of Swords. That's the core layout. And then just for shits and giggles, I shuffled 3 more times, and the Seven of Swords, the Queen of Cups, and the Page of Swords came out. So at a glance, if I was to take just a temperature of the whole thing, it almost tells me that I am supposed to speak about the journey within and how it promises to give you, or the journeyer, the voyager, it promises to give you a little bit of everything. This time yet last year, I used to do this thing where I used to say, be just as loud with your compliments as you are with your criticisms. And I know that part of my core campaign as an expressionist is to continue to bring remembrance to balance. Because there is a such thing as being addicted to positivity to the point where some of the most major cultivating, root bearing experiences are overlooked because they do hurt so good. They hurt so good. And I will be telling you lies if I tell you that I too have my moments where I run from the hurt. I remember reading a passage when I was trying to discover more about the Haitian Revolution. And this female general, to this point, it's almost like I know the name when I see it, but I haven't gotten to the point where I can roll it off the tongue. But it was to the point where she was the one responsible for the catchphrase to boldly stand in front of the firing squad without flinching. It almost makes me want to, what's coming to mind is, oh, wow, Matahara. I'll go back because for some reason that doesn't feel right. But now that it's unfolding like this, now that I'm talking about it, it's almost like inside of my mind, dots are connecting between those two. And what that really means for a person in a practical sense. Like from day to day, what does it actually mean to stand in front of a firing squad without flinching? What does that mean for real? Just to the regular day-to-day rhythm of a person's existence. Well, I think the first 4 cards would lend some explanation. So the Ace of Pentacles, the Three of Cups, the Eight of Swords, and the Ace of Wands. If you look anything like me, then more than likely you'll find yourself somewhere in the spectrum considered an Afro-melanated. And then most often you could be considered someone born inside of the American motif. With this being so, then we know that more than likely you were raised inside of the conversation that says you are a worker. So everything that you situate your life around is by means of working, earning a living, becoming financially independent, and staying gainfully employed. Anything outside of that, you are a fucking deadbeat, you are a wretch, and you are a disgrace to everything. when coming to find out that right on the fringes of this American dream is the reality that says that all the shit is rigged and that usually the most compliant are the ones that are able to get inside these money systems and make it pop. Otherwise, you are dancing with poverty. You are two steps from homelessness, and you have no savings account, mutual funds, life insurance, health insurance. There is a gap with plenty folks standing in it that do not have just the basic coverage to go get a root canal. And we are not talking about being able to sign up for public assistance because that does not always cover the situation. You have to qualify, you still have to qualify for these things. I'm talking to the solopreneur that has not reached the numbers that would independently sustain. But every day they show up and they hustle hard. But even then, there are no lines that connect the dots of money and frequency. Because that is the main mystery, right? Isn't that the main mystery? The main mystery is how do one craft up or draft up the strategies that will allow them to have a consistent stream of income, if not multiple consistent streams of income, so that they will not be a burden, a deadbeat, a whatever else catchphrase goes along with inadequately maintaining a consistent stream of income, as if the game is not rigged. And it's amazing how I hear it where it's like anybody can make money. Then it's like, why everybody not? And why are we not paying attention to those pockets without judgment? Maintaining the folly of haves and have nots. How is it that there's an abundance of this, that, and the third? And then you literally can walk right across a regional line and see the exact opposite. And inside of these communities of the exact opposite, folks still get up every day and go to work, sometimes even work harder than the ones that are on this flip side with an abundance, an array of everything they need. There's imbalance. There's misalignment. There is deactivations and dismissals. So then people have to get really clever and still be in the structural situations that are invisibly stressful. Folks that stress in silence. So let's go to the second set of cards, which is the devil, the Six of Cups, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Tower in reverse. I've always said from the moment that I began studying tarot as a second language, that the devil card, in my opinion, when I sit before other readers, always get misconstrued and seem to go into the tumble cycle of their religiosity. We are still in this in this weird timeline where while we are redefining, because when I say we, I mainly mean those that had been strategically left out of the intellectual process over generations. So that's who the we is specifically speaking about inside of this conversation in this moment. And so slowly but surely, there are different pockets that are being able to tap into different scenarios and different frequencies of intellect. And so things are broadening and expanding, but it's still going to take time for things to kick in for the collective. And I spoke about this and had been, I think this was a I think this was a theme for me without me knowing it, that I was going to have this flavor of correspondence that was going to always be redirecting attention back to, we have to give time for folks to get comfortable with it, with the stuff that they are now learning and being forced to expand by. There are some cultures that have known about or been in frequency of certain intellectual properties for a long while, where the information or the knowledge had been passed from generation to generation to generation. And so, steeped in the roots of their comprehensions or their ingenuities or their innovations or their inspirations is the deep knowledge of something that has, even if it's with in their own opinion, have withstood the test of time. And so they rely on these strategies, these mappings, these blueprints. They, even if they pull them out to use them as seedlings for new endeavors, they still have the fundamental basics of what's considered a trade secret or a family secret, or something that has made them consistent financial frequency over the long haul. Family based financial frequency versus a whole bunch of individuals trying to patchwork this shit together. And I'll give you a case in point. There are a few brands that I can go pull from out of my kitchen right now that says that they have been established since 18 dot 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 dot. Oh, there's too many dots. So from the 1800s, this family business or agricultural whoop-de-whoop or whatever it is, whether it's sugar or oatmeal or grits or what's another one? Spices, McCormick. I don't remember McCormick's date, but I don't think McCormick was established until like after the 1900s. But still, there are some, and it's not coming to mind specifically which one, but I know that within the last 2 weeks, I looked at the box of something that said it was established 18 something. Now imagine being the family frequency of that particular brand. I am almost certain that if you were inside of that frequency, your devil would look a lot different than it does to you right now, which tells me over and over again that the concepts between God and devil are all subjective. It's all subjective to your nature and your nurture. That ratio being a product of your environment, within those environments, if they presented God one way and the devil another way, versus you being raised in situations with God and devil was presented total opposite aspects, which in a holistic view, this and that is true. Everything inside of this realm has a light side and a dark side. How do we define light and dark? That's the secret ingredient. This and that is true, all dependent on the point of view. and that divine differences is all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. And us getting into this hideous habit of figuring that we can decipher or determine or discern what's right and what's wrong across the board for everyone is going to continue to eat at the fibers, the very fibers that's needed to remember this thing. So for me, the devil card tells me, especially seeing as that I am reading these cards for myself, it tells me that I need to be more keen on my moments in the shadows and that there is richness in the shadows. And just because I'm dissatisfied with it does not mean that it is something that I ought to run to the hills from. So many times, especially when I am bearing with bearing witness to something of a mystical muse origin or a mystical, whimsical, the stuff that mainstream will have you believe is just hoopla or somehow evil. Some of those types of stories have expanded my consciousness. I want to say, as an advocate of the non physical world. It honestly gave my intellect what it needed to balance out how I vision my physical world in complement of my non-physical world, and how there are certain connectors and strings and cosmic affiliations that go dismissed inside of the regular human frequency day to day. And low vibratory frequency, yes, with it being grounding and dense and heavier, still remains just as important as the light, fluffy stuff. And it is no way better for you to be in your light space, which is the chakras or the energetic hues. Or, oh, I use the chakra system just to keep things simple, but however it goes, anything above the heart chakra, anything above the heart chamber, and you're running from anything below the heart chamber, which is the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root, and then below the root. I am always challenging folks to explain to me how they view as above, so below. What does that actually mean? Are you still trying to stuff it inside of a context about heaven and hell? Or are we really going to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing when we say that it is specifically about energies? It is specifically about intuition versus logic. I don't even like to use the verses because I think it's all of it. It's all of it. So it's not either or. So take the verses out. It's both. It's the light and the dark. And then to make things real nice and sassy and savory, it's about the harmonization. It's about the synthesizing. It's almost like a the magical moment when the conductor gets in the pocket in front of a symphony. Have you ever witnessed or experienced that? We'll even do the band because the band can get in the pocket, honey. So, let's just we'll keep it on the lines of the conductor and the musical ensemble. It would be nice if we begin to view our energetic frequencies like a symphony or a band. and that there are many instruments, or can be many instruments, or all depending on the sun, the moon, and the rotation of the stars. It could be a small pocket, aka a band, or big pocket, aka a symphony. And between the ebbs and the flows, the highs and the lows, as above, so below, the one individual gets a chance to navigate the world on a small scale and a massive scale, all depending on how it zooms in and out through perceptions. And so the last set of cards, the Page of Cups, the Knight of Wands, the Ten of Swords, and the Ace of Swords. That bottom line screams at me the flexibility around our emotional intelligence and our ability to express thereof. What does it mean to feel? What does it mean to think? And when you're blending and mixing and mingling in them both, how do you express yourself? And are you true to that expression? Because one day you could be in warrior mode, and the next day you could be in lover mode. Two totally different sets of frequencies. But with you being the hue being and you having a light side and a dark side and honoring them both, then you'll be true to the expression that arrives in the moment. And I know everybody wants everybody to control emotions. It's almost like telling folks to control a tiger. You've never been in front of a tiger. You don't even know the vibrant frequency of the tiger, but control that tiger. You better control that tiger. You better not be afraid of it. Look it in the eyes and pop it on the nose. Which makes me believe that the last three cards is paramount, with it being the Seven of Swords, the Queen of Cups, and the Page of Swords, because we have to get out of the notion that it's either or, it's either righteous or wretched, it's either good or evil, it's either God or the devil, because that is robbing us, which is what the Seven of Swords represents. It is robbing us of our whole perception, our whole insight, our balanced insight, to be able to see over there as well as over there, up there as well as below down there, and not be spooked, knowing that it is a way of the earthly experience, which never promised you that it was going to be full of delight, because iron sharpens iron. I've even come across folks that have lived a totally privileged life. They have no idea what it is like to be inside of an environment where shots are fired, sirens are blazing, police are everywhere, knocking on doors, demanding to come inside your house. There is no food in the refrigerator. Everybody has now had a pink slip, and unemployment isn't calling back. And literally, there's a house full of people trying to figure out what's for dinner. It happens. It really is a thing. And we honestly have criminalized that. So in my opinion, I believe the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups showed up in this reading to say that there is still these sweet pockets, even in the midst of chaos, that if we begin to define things differently and speak with a different type of conviction, all on a self-discovery basis. Now, self-discovery doesn't mean you're discovering self for self. You're discovering self so that you be able to contribute to the collective on a different type of flow, a different type of contingency, a different type of cosmic contingency, with the understanding that all sorts of fuckery is a go, all is fair in love and war, and that there will be some things that you don't understand, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't meant to be. And trust me when I say these challenging, but also corrective, catalytic, class worthy courses, even with it being outside of the conventional means of what would be considered educational, is still very much imperative and is damn near required for the evolution of the individual. And seeing as that here with us, with the Bravehearts, the Urbanites, the Coach Mad Hatters, the Urban Creatrix, and the Crimson Velvet VIPs, we know that you have to, when I say you, meaning, as I said before, those that have been inside of a generational frequency where it was legal that you not have the intelligence of anything. That was legal. It was illegal to teach you or your people. It was illegal. And I don't even know if I can hone that in enough. There was a time when it was illegal for you to have a book, pencil, paper, dictionary. Yeah. And anyone who gave you that was going straight to fucking jail. So all of the time that it takes to deal with a collective on the realms of what it is that it knows and what it is that it doesn't know, and then having to um, counteract the audacity of those around figuring that because they know it, you should know it. And why don't you know it? And why aren't you digging in? And I do it. Trust me when I say I do. I have my moments when it's like, why aren't you studying more? Why aren't you investigating this? Why aren't you at the bookstore? Why do you not have your journal with you? What is going on? Why in the world is this moment at the bar more important? Why is it that socialization or the socializing or the social engineering frequency of American motif is more important? Why are the celebrities or what's going on in celebrity life the talking points when we are in dire straits, individually and collectively? Why does it matter what these fucking celebrities are doing? While we are still struggling to sit with self. We still piling more shit into the brain and having a terrible time at trying to align and calm and blend and mend that which is already in there. Almost as if we are stuffing even more clothes in an already full to capacity washing machine. And come on, the rule of thumb is if you pack that washer too much, that which is already in there will not get clean. And we continue to show up for the shit, me included. And what we were going to talk about today, we done put that to the side. We done threw out the rundown, and now we talking about this fuckery. But I will say that the latest things unfolding, I think, are divine. Honestly, I think that even though many will chime in and they are only speaking from the physical level and they're only speaking in terms of these socially engineered pockets, I'm gonna go out on a limb as I usually do because I never show up with the public or may oh no, hold on. I never show up with the most popular opinion. That's why I say I have an intriguing opinion. So here's my opinion on that thing. That as I've said before, that there is a divine feminine frequency that is just, you know, not taking any prisoners in certain dynamics. And as much as we would love to pick apart the frequencies, good, bad, or indifferent, the good, the bad, and the urban ugly, that how women show up in our lives and when we are expected to defend it. And this isn't just talking about the husband defending the wife, because I say all the time, you fuck with my big sister, you got a problem with me. I say it all the time. I think we are at the place where the definitive natures of the feminine frequency always figuring like the aid, the the ratio of one to come to one's aid in certain circumstances is being re-strategized. It's being re-strategized. And it is not what we initially thought it was. It is not, it does not mean that just the dudes are coming to the aids or coming to the honor of the feminine or the women, the guys and girls. It's not about that. But we are going to have these weird pockets of just outbursts of unpredictable chaos because the frequency is saying, I've come to shake some shit up. And the only way that I am going to do that is have these little outbursts. What's unfortunate is that we are only using the celebrity spotlight as examples, as living examples, as if they are not already in a world of make-believe. Like I told my best friend the other day, folks out in the street get slapped in their mouth all day, every day, twice on Sundays. And I am not going to judge it good, bad, or indifferent because I wasn't there. I don't know the context of why that went down. So why in the world would I even put myself in the pocket of thinking I could judge anything from the nosebleed seats, let alone from the satellite? So I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to share my screen now. And we are going to get into it. So as I said earlier, this is correspondence from the Temple of Hip Hop and its founder, KRS-One, which will be my teacher for as long as I am and beyond my earthling experience. He honestly, him and his crew and all that is connected to him and his lineage of hip hop has honestly given me room for pause, room for principle, just room for perspective. Peace. And I thank you for your time. I am KRS-One, and I am reaching out to request an interview with you regarding your contributions to the cultural history of hip hop. Since the recording of my song South Bronx in 1986 and the establishment of the Stop the Violence movement in 1989, all in the same gang in 1990, Human Education Against Lies in 1991, and the Temple of Hip Hop in 1996, and finally, the establishment of hip hop as an international culture of peace and prosperity at the United Nations headquarters on May 16, 2001, I and others have been documenting and preserving the cultural history of hip hop. This is not a musical history or DJs and rappers. This is not a musical history about DJs and rappers. This is a cultural history about the birth and activities of a specific people. Every 10 years since 1991, I've been asking hip hop pioneers, originators, breakers, MCs, graffiti writers, DJs, beatboxers, music executives, journalists, professors, and legendary artists of all sorts to contribute the actual historical documentation of hip hop's cultural experience. Over the years, many have contributed, but many more have not. So every 10 years, we launch a campaign to gather as much information as we can regarding the existence of hip hop as culture and not as just entertainment. The purpose of our research aids in the preservation and further development of hip hop's real heritage and cultural lineage. A heritage and cultural lineage that hip hop's children and their children's children shall rely upon for their cultural identity and social political respect in the world. We have to get this right because the future of our culture, we have to get this right because the future of our culture and all who will participate in our culture are dependent upon us getting our act together today. Will you help us in this mission? I am asking for about 2 hours of your time to engage in a conversation which will aim to answer the following questions among others. What is your name and how did you come up with it? What is your birthday, your place of birth? Do you know what time you were born? AM, PM. What is your educational background? What schools did you attend? Are you a professional at something other than hip hop artistic elements? Where did you grow up and where is your family from? Are you hip hop? Do you consider yourself part of hip hop's original culture? What is hip hop to you? Who was your mentor? Who and or what inspired you to participate in hip hop? How do you remember hip hop beginning? Not just its music, but its creative attitude. What was the attitude that motivated you to pursue hip hop? What was going on before hip hop, which contributed to hip hop's formation? What were the common foods at the time of hip hop's birth? What kind of jobs did early hip hoppers have? How did we survive? How did your particular art form come into being? And from your perspective, what is the origin of your particular skill, artistic or otherwise? How has your skill and or art form changed over the years? What is being forgotten? In your observation, who and or what was against the rise of hip hop? In your observation, what activities as well as character will help hip hop to prosper? And what activities as well as character will destroy hip hop? What should hip hop's children be regarding? What should hip hop's children know regarding their past? What must never be forgotten? What would you like to see hip hop accomplish in the future as a global culture? These are some of the questions that will guide our conversation if you decide to participate. Again, I thank you for your time regarding this matter, and I await your response. KRS-One. When I first read that, I was blown away because you could teach an entire class. You can hold an entire therapy series from that correspondence that I just read, especially if we're going to approach it as a non-entertaining tool. We honestly could use the rest of 2022 exploring these questions and answering them and showing up for different conversations and exploring and unpacking them further, which could take up our attention to the point where the fuckery and the shenanigans, we will, mm. You know how they say something dies when you take your attention off of it? I wonder, as a cultural movement, all that will identify as hip hop, if we honestly just stop tuning into this shit, I wonder exactly what will happen with the evolution of the economy, education, agriculture, arts, sciences, performances, the efforts to know thyself. So here's what I pledge to do: to study those questions. And even though I am not considered a hip hop pioneer, I am one of its constituents, as well as one of its consumers, as well as one of its creatives. Hip hop has been the inspiration to my ingenuity on so many levels, whether it's writing poems or giving advice or getting my boogie on, using it as meditation movement, reciting lyrics when I want to flip somebody the bird. So I wonder if there will be others joining this call, which, speaking of which is a perfect segue to say tomorrow, Sunday, April 4th, 2022, begins the next Mystical Fool Shiro Hero's Journey season. And it will run all the way till Sunday, September 18th, 2022. Each week, we will be focusing on a major arcana in the specific lineup as it is inside of traditional tarot. So you don't even need to sign up for the class if it's something that you just want to get with yourself and become your own teacher so that you can build up the discipline of meditation. And almost in the flavor by which KRS-One was just inviting folks to answer these questions, ponder these questions, and then catch up with him to actually have a formal, official documenting session. Yeah, that's right. Didn't sound right at first, but having a session of documentation so that your point of view, your flavor of chronicle can then be officially put into the archives. If you don't want to get as formal as that, you honestly can become your own teacher, your own student, and sit with self and still go through the formalities of sitting with these questions, pondering these questions, and then taking stock in your answers. And taking stock in your answers, in my opinion, means populating a journal that you may leave behind for those coming after you so that they too can tap into this knowledge. When I first started this conversation, I specifically said that most often financial independence comes through the inheritance of knowledge. And even though we may not be there yet with the valuing of inheriting journals from our loved ones, it really is a thing. Love letters, journals, blueprints, it's a thing. It really is a thing. Trade secrets are on the lock and key to this very day because it's such a thing. So I'll end it here. Thank you for joining me. If you do find yourself in front of this conversation, inside of this conversation, even underneath this conversation, just like the elephant and the, how many sultans was it? Was it 9 sultans? I can't remember right now, but there were blind, like the elephant and the blind men, where everyone had their position in front of the elephant. And even though they were blind and asked, what is this in front of you? And they could only express or give their answer according to what it is they could touch and sense. So one of them said because they touched the trunk. It's a long or whatever describing the trunk. And then one that described the tail, and then the other described the foot, and then the other described the tusks. So like they were all right and wrong at the same time. Why? Because they had the inability to zoom out to see the full picture. And as I said before, I think that's the secret ingredient. The secret ingredient is to understand as an individual that you're zoom in. Then you connect to others so that you may zoom out to get a better view of the big elephant in the fucking room. So thanks for hanging out with me. I know I've given you more than enough to ponder. I will be tuning back in with more information from the Goddess Cipher. I have not forgotten about the Goddess Cipher. There's just been some other things that has been going on that has been requiring my attention, but I'm getting back to that because that's one of my favorite moments. The Goddess Cipher is a intriguing space for me to dwell in, especially as a wordsmith. I like being in a frequency where it feels like I am getting the intimate conversations of a goddess and then being courted to express it to the outer world. It's an incredible, incredible energy to sit in. And so, yeah, I'm going to be trying to speak more to invite more into that space. Mainly because to sit at the helm of a goddess is a different type of scene. That's a different type of situation. And it is all about our meditative frequencies. It's to build up our metaphora, to build up how we perceive literal and figurative and metaphorical and metaphysical, how we begin to understand the physical in conjunction with the non-physical, and how much more elaborate frequency we can tap into just by acknowledging our position in the middle of it. There's one side that we can identify and tap into for our physicalness, and then our non-physicalness. So, hey, yeah, thanks for joining me, hanging out with me. I hope your notebooks are being populated as a result for the sake of your self discovery. And until next time, I wish you well.